1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
With that, let me try to bring in, our next great speaker. He has a tremendous amount of experience, Mr. Chad Farrell from Encore, on these types of sites, these species, these exotic properties, which I made a joke earlier, Chad, that brownfields are like a box of chocolates, which people who know me, I've repeated that many times for many years. I learned it from someone else, a great man, Charlie Barch, who I mentioned before.
Oh, yeah.
And you are, one of these guys who's been out there in some of these other markets, navigated some of these other programs. You've seen observed very closely, like Massachusetts, the run on landfills that they had with their program when the recs came out. It was a really good, I guess the best example we've seen so far of one of these renaissances come alive, thanks to constructive policy and to the point of no return. Basically, like I said, there's really no more landfills left of the right kind that we need for solar.
Yeah, we are. There's still a few left, Dan. We're bidding on one in Western Massachusetts as we speak. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Laura touched on it really well. State policy matters. Yeah, obviously, I think here in the Northeast, we do have, a bit more of a legacy industrial past that lends itself to perhaps a greater density of these environmentally challenged sites. We have greater population density, which I think lends itself to a greater number of solid waste landfills dotting the landscape up here. But again, it does really matter. The state policy helps, and I'd be happy to talk about a couple of the projects that we've advanced in our home state of Vermont. We're not the biggest market out there, but I think we've enjoyed some early mover status and some really progressive policy at the beginning of the last decade that really sort of allowed us to advance, what the public generally wants to see, which is reutilization of otherwise undevelopable land. And so, it's a win-win-win. And, we were fortunate enough to recognize that early on. We did have to work with some of our legislative leaders to craft some of these incentive structures to essentially level the playing field. Because let's face it, these projects are more complicated and therefore more expensive. So there's got to be some mechanism to be able to compete with just traditional greenfield projects. So, yeah.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, we'd love to see that. I think we're going to try to share your screen or load up some slides for you here. And I love the pictures the best. Seeing the stuff come alive is...
Yeah, I guess I do have the enviable task of being able to show some cool pictures of some projects that got done. And, kudos to everybody in Virginia and West Virginia for recognizing this opportunity. I think it's going to be transformative for your communities, and hats off for jumping in. These projects are more complicated, but they're absolutely worth it.
Yeah, they're going to level up. It's great. But show us, please share with us the work that you've done, and you've helped literally blaze this trail.
Sure. Let me see if I can pull this up. Can you all see this?
It's in. I can see the whole PowerPoint.
How about now?
There we go. Beautiful.
Okay.
Already starting off beautiful.
Great. So yeah, Dan asked me to talk about some redevelopment successes that we've had. I'm going to focus on a couple solar projects that we've done on capped landfills here in Vermont, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just a quick level setting background on who we are. We're based again here in the Vermont market, good early mover market. We're a community scale solar developer and construction company. EPC is engineer, procure, and construct. So we get to build the projects that we originate. We do have a focus on these underutilized properties. I've got some statistics below talking about how many landfills and brownfield sites we've done, but we've also done a number of rooftop projects and parking canopy projects as well. Again, trying to just extract the most value out of any one particular piece of real estate. with renewables. I think another aspect to our business that I'm particularly proud of is we became a certified benefit corporation in 2016, and that kind of drives our values, right? It's all about establishing a triple bottom line approach to our work and to our projects. So not only are we concerned with the economic bottom line, because if the project doesn't cash flow, it doesn't get built, but we're very engaged around the social and environmental aspects of the work that we get to do. Wanted to, this photo here, with all the talk about pollinators in this 3-day conference, which is fantastic, wanted to just highlight that that is absolutely something that we've been focused on over the last 3 or 4 years. This particular project has a mature pollinator population, and I really think pollinators, they're fantastic, right? I mean, we need to protect these organisms. They're key to our future food security. But they're also, I mean, it's just beautiful. And they also help us to sort of mitigate the concern that people may have of putting a big solar project in their community. What actually happens is the pollinators take hold, and, you know, the agricultural production, you know, folks' gardens, fruit trees, the production just goes crazy. So just wanted to throw that in there, and I'm glad to see you all focusing on that important aspect of dual use that we can bring to the table here. But the developer's role, what do we do? You know, mostly we're out there identifying and originating the project locations. So we need to execute site control. We need to get landowners comfortable that placing a solar project on a brownfield or landfill piece of property, you know, is not as risky as it sounds. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox to control that risk, whether that be environmental insurance, regulatory programs that encourage this form of redevelopment, as Laura was speaking about. But really, it's trying to get our landowners comfortable that we can provide a net improvement to their property and not result in additional liability. It's critical that we execute contracts to sell the power from the projects that we've developed. So PPA is a power purchase agreement. We need to have somebody to buy the power, or in some cases, the aspects of the power. So a lot of markets have a net metering program. And so sometimes instead of selling electrons directly to the customer, we're selling net metering credits instead. Every market's different. We unfortunately still have 50 different energy markets in the United States, actually probably 51 or 52 or 53. So we provide detailed financial analysis. Again, if the project doesn't cash flow, it doesn't get built. There's a lot of risk mitigation work that we're engaged around. We're ultimately responsible for engineering the project and achieving all of the permits to operate the plant that are required at both the state and the local level. Then we would secure, once we have all those assets under control, meaning PPA, site control, all our permits, and our interconnection agreement with the utility, then we can go out and secure project financing to go out and actually build the project. And then once the plant is operational, there's a significant amount of work on the asset management over the operational life of the project. So here's how we kind of look at solar on brownfields and landfills, just to frame the opportunity for all the community members in the audience here. Really, brownfields today are essentially consumers of community value. You know, I have a number of issues here as to why, but mainly, you know, there's just little incentive to do anything. And that results in, you know, property tax revenue, reduced aesthetic appeals, and, you know, constrained future redevelopment opportunities. Well, along comes solar development, and now we can, you know, create producers of community value. So we're gonna, you know, generate revenue from that project. We're gonna have, you know, electricity savings for the customers that are associated with the project. And we're gonna do everything in a means that does not disturb or, you know, exacerbate any of the existing environmental hazards that may remain on the property. So really, it's trying to move from a concept of being idle, you know, environmentally damaging property in a community to one that actually produces community value. So yeah, a couple of case studies. This particular project is a 5 megawatt project in Brattleboro, Vermont, down in the southeastern corner of our state. You can see that this landfill was not at all, geometrically laid out. So we have to work with a number of the constraints that the site provides, mainly slope stability issues. But you can see we tried to maximize the production on this particular project because the revenue streams associated with this project in terms of the PPA rate allow for a decent amount of energy in the summer months. And just some of the community benefits from this particular project. Well, it does provide a significant amount of lease revenue to the regional waste district that owns the parcel. That has allowed them to expand their reach into the community with additional services and programs. There are a number of schools and municipalities located throughout Windham County, in which Brattleboro sits. And this is what we call a virtual net metering opportunity. So we have a whole host of different customers that are going to receive net metering credits. And they're essentially, the way the deal works with the off-takers or the customers is they are paying 85 cents on the dollar for these net metering credits. So if they're getting $1 worth of net metering credits, they're only paying 85 cents. And that results in a significant savings on their electric bills over the 25-year contract duration. So we're estimating up to about $9 million based on, projected electric rates in the future. The project also throws off a decent amount of property tax revenue for both the state education fund as well as the town of Brattleboro. There's another project that's a little closer to Burlington, right next door in South Burlington. This is a 2.5 megawatt project on the South Burlington landfill. I don't have a sexy drone photo of this particular project because it's located immediately adjacent to the Burlington airport, and the FAA does not allow drones to be flying that close to airports. But I wanted to also include a few pictures here. I know there's been some discussion around some of the complexities associated with these landfill projects. So on this top photo, you can see how we had to design the existing landfill venting system into the solar design. And then you can also see, obviously, you can see these concrete ballast blocks here that form the foundations for the racking system. And obviously it's a closed cap landfill. The remedy is a geomembrane and 3 feet of clean soil. And as part of our permit, obviously we're not able to compromise that remedy or affect the function of that soil cap. So significant erosion control design issues associated with these projects, and then complications as to not being able to just drill the posts for the solar racking into the ground as we would normally do on a greenfield project. So, and we need to use these low tire pressure or tracked bobcat machines to move all of the ballast blocks into place. So it's just a much more labor intensive, time consuming construction effort. Again, gets to the slightly increased cost of a landfill project as compared to the same size greenfield project in that same location. And then finally, we have to encase all of the wiring in these stainless steel encasements. And, that again is due to the fact that we're not able to trench and bury that infrastructure below grade as we normally would do on a greenfield project. So just again, a little bit more complicated. So we're hoping, so we would advocate that there need to be incentives in place again to levelize that playing field. If it's all about the lowest price per kilowatt hour generated, these projects would have a tough time competing. So these two particular projects in Vermont, we worked with the state legislature who, you know, Vermonters want to see additional sources of clean energy. They want to see sites such as these, which are called preferred sites in our state. Preferred sites also include rooftops, carports, gravel pits, brownfields and landfills. And so the general public wants to see these sites utilized. So the legislature, you know, we work with the legislature to create essentially an adder. There's a modest adder that these projects see that traditional greenfield projects do not see, that helps level the playing field. And so just a few benefits from this particular project. Again, it's a little bit smaller than the Brattleboro project, so a little bit less on the property tax revenue, a little bit less on the electrical savings for the customers, which include the city of South Burlington and the school district. And again, significant citizen interest in clean energy. A lot of the members of the South Burlington Energy Committee actually helped us with the legislative lobbying work to establish that incentivization structure, which was tremendously helpful. But the real exciting thing to me is what the city's doing with the energy savings that they're securing. They've created a revolving energy trust fund, which has allowed them to hire an energy manager, created a new sustainability officer for the city. And what they're doing with this trust fund is essentially rolling forward with the savings from the solar project. They're rolling those savings into additional energy cost saving measures like LED streetlights for the entire city and things like that. So they're really just leveraging the savings into significant additional savings for the community. So it's a really exciting project, and again, I think shows the value of the public-private partnership and, you know, the value that renewable energy, and in these two cases, solar energy, can provide for these otherwise idle, you know, unused properties. So I believe that is it. And I don't know, Dan, if we have time for questions and answers, or you just wanted me to run through some of those slides and get to show you all those exciting pictures. And
yeah, they're brilliant and beautiful. So what we're going to do is I'm going to announce a soft break for anybody who'd like to stand up and go get a glass of water or refill your coffee cup after all of the substance today. But we'd like to roll with Chad for some questions up until the top of the hour. We've got some bonus minutes here. So we know this is a big solar slog via Zoom and YouTube, so we really encourage everybody to stand up, but you might have us plugged in on your cell phone, your mobile device, and you can walk around with us. So Chad, we've got some questions. I want to come back. Some folks had some specific questions for you, like what was the acreage of I think the Brattleboro landfill, or the big one that you had?
Yeah, the big one, the Brattleboro landfill, that's about 22 acres of area that includes solar projects. I believe the entire site's more like 30, but we couldn't use every inch.
Right. Yeah, you got to kind of make it work there. Get creative. I saw over in China they've done Mickey Mouse. You know, from, from the air.
Well, I mean, look, Dan, it's a really good point. Let's face it. Generating electricity with solar power at any meaningful amount requires a decent amount of land, and I think that's why these sites are so fantastic for solar. You know, there's no other use. Maybe the dog park. You know, there's no real other use. Certainly not a use that's going to generate this kind of revenue other than solar. So if we need big tracts of land, let's go use the big tracts of land that don't have any other beneficial use, whether that be agricultural, whether that be for housing, whether that be for other commercial development.
Yeah, we're going to need a lot more juice to power the drones. The drone armies are coming, and the flying cars and all the batteries. So we're just going to need more and more power. and a lot of it's going to come from solar. So why not use all these? We got, as I mentioned at the top of our broadcast today, 500,000 abandoned mines in this country, 1 million or 2 brownfields, depending on who you talk to. We got 2,000 Superfund sites. Most of them are pretty good size, and that's all just the stuff that we've counted on the books already. And as we've also mentioned many times today, you know, it's green on green now. There's real money, and because of some of these first generation successes, like in Massachusetts, the laboratory of states at work experimenting with policy. A story that I can tell, Amesbury, Massachusetts, a little town on the north of the bay there, they had 2 landfills that they did. And I think one was like, again, maybe 20 acres, one was maybe 12 acres or something like that. Don't quote me there, but it's all cash. They're selling all that power, and the city is pocketing the money. And so, you know, these sites, these kind of medium-sized sites that are nearby load, they're in urban areas, it just makes all the sense in the world to do these kinds of things, if you haven't turned it into a soccer field or
Right.
something like that,
For sure.
like that, Chad. So yeah, you working with policy, I'm not sure how dialed in you are on Virginia, and like they have new HB 1925, but what's your view on you know, seeing these things really work in other states, and the big steps that Virginia is taking forward?
Yeah, well, I think it's really impressive. Others on my team have dove into the legislation a little bit further than I have, but you know, we've sort of been looking at, you know, coal country. I think coal country is going to provide a tremendous amount of opportunity for solar PV generation. Whether you're talking, you know, the coal ash ponds that have dried up that can be stabilized, whether you're talking about the mine sites themselves. I think Laura was also talking about, you know, being able to leverage the existing infrastructure of these sites. And, you know, let's face it, to operate a mine that required a lot of electricity. So the infrastructure is there. They're bigger sites than what we have here in New England. So that's exciting. And really, I think, and then, you know, it's just a bigger market, you know, more electrical consumers. And I think you touched on it just now, Dan, as we move to electrify our transportation fleets, our thermal, you know, all of our building systems, we're just going to need more and more and more electrical generation. And we're not going to get it from large, centrally located, you know, coal plants anymore. We're not going to really get it from nuclear, as far as I can tell, over the next 5 or 10 years. And, you know, we're probably not going to get it from large scale natural gas plants either, many of which are being retired now. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to need a lot more energy, and we're going to need to be really thoughtful about where we site it and where we generate it. And again, I think that's where brownfields and landfills and mine scarred lands absolutely come in.
Yeah, we're really going to bring it in the next session, which is a great one, and dive deep. But you know, I had a few questions for you on, you know, slope. Seeing some of the great sites that you have and your experience working. What are the possibilities there, and, you know, particularly, of course, for the ballasted systems?
It's interesting. I mean, there's different technologies, different racking or ballasted racking technologies, or, you know, forms that we can use, but it's typically about 15% slope threshold. You know, that's an improvement over when we started doing these projects. It was more like 10% back in the day, but there have been, you know, some of the racking manufacturers have patented some technologies that essentially resist the ballast blocks from moving on a slope. Because again, especially on a landfill, with respect to erosion control and maintenance of the cap, we can't really, you know, we can't terrace any of these, you know, we can't dig into the cap. So it's got to sit right on top, and it can't slide. But I think, you know, there are, you know, there's improvements on that front. But that's a critical design factor for sure.
Yeah, and technology makes things possible. You also showed the awesome erosion control systems. Stormwater is an issue even in urban environments, especially as Mother Nature really starts whooping us on climate change. We've got stronger storms. We had I'm here in Chicago. We had it snowed for 11 days in a row this winter. Texas, everywhere. So we've got to be ready for these things. And I guess kind of final thought I'll throw to you. We're going to wrap before the top of the hour, but you talked about leveling the playing field, and we've got wrinkles on these sites. It's full of possibilities and profits for the people and the places, but there's stormwater and
Yep.
slope. But you're doing it. What can we do this? Can we follow it in your footsteps, Chad?
Oh yeah, no, it's again, I think you just the technology exists. We now have tools in the toolbox in the form of environmental insurance, and we've got financing groups that are comfortable with these projects. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. But what we need is progressive policy. We need, our legislative friends to really, identify this opportunity and work to craft legislation that encourages the use of these projects as compared to, and look, there's benefit for putting solar projects on farms as well. I mean, I think we can make arguments that, almost every farm has an underutilized 10 or 15 or 20 acres. But, in order to leverage, brownfields, landfills, mine-scarred lands where there are environmental risks to mitigate, where there are additional construction considerations that need to be taken into account. Just having really forward-looking legislation that looks to incentivize these, what we call here in Vermont preferred sites, because that's what the community wants. The community wants to see solar projects on rooftops, carports, landfills, brownfields, more so than they want to see them just sitting out in a green farm field.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Chad. And more and more folks are getting the bug, and it's bipartisan, as we've mentioned all morning. People
Absolutely
understand these sites, and on that note, we've really queued up. We're going to drill down on this right at this altitude. So thank you, Chad. Perfect segue into our next session.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.